In this assignment, we're going to learn how to use particles in conjunction with stock video. So this fire that we have at the bottom is stock video, and we're going to be creating the embers that rise from that fire. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll make a new composition. We'll call this fire, and we'll leave it at 2000 by 2000. We'll hit OK. So let's go into our fire composition. We're going to go to Layer, New. We'll make a solid layer, and we'll just call this Embers. Okay, and the next thing we want to do is we want to go into our source here. We'll get our fire loop and we'll bring that down. Now our fire loop is at 24 frames a second, and we're at 30 frames a second, but that's okay. For now, let's hide the embers and we'll just take a look at this fire. So the fire, it's moving fine, but it's a little bit ugly. It's a little bit faded. So let's go ahead and scale it up to fit the size of our composition. And you can scale it in just a little bit too, so it's non-proportional. And then we're going to adjust some of the levels to make that look a little bit better. So we're going to go here into Effect with our fire selected. We're going to go to Color Correction, and then we're going to go to Levels. So we'll play with the levels a little bit. We'll brighten it up. So we'll bring that up, and we'll bring this down. And you can play around with that a little bit more. Then we're going to go to Effect, Color Correction, Hue and Saturation. We're going to bump the saturation up quite a bit, just so we get that red-orange glow here, right? Then, last but not least, we're going to go to Effect, Stylize, and we're going to go down to Glow. You see by default, you get this really hot-looking feel to it. We're going to change the radius of the glow. We're going to really expand that out so it gives us that nice soft glow. Now, if you play through, you can see if we just turn off some of those effects, if we go into our effects controls, and we just click off of those effects, you can see this is the original, and this is the new one. Looks way better. Okay, so that sets the stage for us using the particles to create the embers and to match the intensity of this fire. So we'll go ahead and turn this embers back on. You'll see it'll make it black because we have not assigned our particle emitter to it. Once you do that, if you go into Effect, Stylize, or pardon me, Simulation, and CC Particle World, once you've created those particles, it'll go ahead and turn it transparent. So now the particles are the only thing we're worried about. In our previous examples, we have just gone ahead and used the explosive feature with a directional axis, but in this one we're going to change up the feel of that. So if you go here into CC Particle World, you can do it in your effects control too. We're going to go to Producer. We're going to take the radius X and we're going to make it very wide. So we want the radius to be the entire screen, and we're going to increase the radius Y as well. So we'll just make the radius X 0.6 and we'll make the radius Y 0.075. Now we're going to move this emitter down and off of the bottom of the screen. Let's go ahead and change the position of our particles using the particle Y. We'll just drag it down. And we're just going to put it off the bottom of the screen here, so our position is going to be 0.6. Now we're going to change the behavior of the particles here. Instead of explosive, we actually want to turn this into twirl. Now you won't see any difference because twirl by default is going to be moving down because our gravity is set to pull this down. Now there's two ways to do this. You can go into the gravity vector and you can reverse that. Instead of being 1 in the Y, you can turn this to -1. And now it'll push the particles upwards. If you want to leave that, you can also turn the force of the gravity to -0.5. So let's just take a look at that. And we can see now our sparks are shooting up. So we really don't want them to be moving that fast. So what we want to do is we want to set this to -0.05. Now when we do that, the particles will move much slower. And you can play around with the speed and feel that you want. But once they move slower, they are going to die before they reach the top of the screen, like in our example. So we'll change the longevity up here. We're just going to change that to be 2.3 or 2.5 or so. So you can see now the particles last until they get to the top. And by default, that twirl is going to be very, very fast. So let's change the velocity on that to like 0.2. Let's change that longevity to 5, and let's see how that looks. So now you can see that your particles are lasting until they get off of the screen, but we're making a whole lot of particles. So let's go ahead and turn our birth rate down. We're going to turn that down to like 0.3, and let's see how that looks. That's going to look pretty good. Let's even change it to 0.2. So we're just getting a few in there. Next thing we want to address is we want to address the type of particle that we're emitting. In the past, we've done a line and we've done a motion polygon, but here what we're going to do is a faded sphere. So if you zoom in, the faded sphere, it's going to be the same as a shaded sphere, but it will be transparent on the edges. So we're going to change our birth size to 0.1. We'll change our death size to like 0.12. And now we're getting these particles that are looking like embers of the fire. Okay, let's change our opacity, max opacity to be 1. And then we'll change our birth color, and what you can do is we can just grab some right out of the fire. So the birth color is going to be that white hot. Okay, and then we'll get our death color, and the death color is going to be that nice orange that the fire has. And you can even pump that up just a little bit. So now if we play through, you'll see your particles are emitting, and they'll take a little bit to show up on the screen. Now by default, they show up on the screen after they've started emitting, and when they start emitting, they do so at frame 0. So what you can do is you can sort of pre-warm the particles. You can go ahead and go to frame 100 where your particles are already spawned and reaching the top of the screen, maybe like frame 125, and you can select that part of your select that part of your image, which is your solid, and you can just go up here to layer, markers, and add marker. Now that marker indicates that that's frame 125 on the solid. You can then take the solid and you can drag it backwards so that it starts before frame 0, and just put that marker at the beginning of your composition. You can see when we do that, then it creates the particles right at the beginning of the composition rather than us having to wait for them to spawn. So the last thing we want to do is we want to add just a little bit of push to the right. Right now our particles are rising directly up, and I want to push them to the right just a little bit. So let's go ahead in here to physics. We're going to go to gravity, and in our gravity vector, we're just going to play around with the X. So you can see if you take the X and you scrub it, then it's going to give you an option to say, oh, I want to push it this way or that way, and this is a horizontal force. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it to the right just a little bit. So let's just go ahead and say negative 0.13, and then let's preview and see what that looks like. And you can see now that they're drifting off to the right a little bit, and it looks a little bit better than rising straight up. Now our particles are a little bit dull, so let's do the same thing we did with our fire. We're going to first select the embers, we're going to change their mode, and we're going to make them screen. So this is going to overlay. When it goes over white, it's not going to appear black. And then we're going to go to effect, stylize, and glow, and we'll just see it'll add that kind of hotness to it. We want to do the same thing we did and expand the radius of the particles. Let's just go ahead and preview. The last thing we want to do now is we just want to bracket our composition so it doesn't go on forever and ever. So let's just take our end of our preview window here. We'll drag this back to about 200 frames. Then we're going to go to composition. We're going to say trim comp to work area, and we'll preview through. And you can see now the particles will play. And then before we get to the end of the fire loop, it's just going to loop back to the beginning. We'll get a little pop, but that's not a big deal. That's the completion of our lesson. Good luck. Have fun.